Welcome back to the Squarespace Entrepreneur Podcast. Today I want to talk about the best way that I have arrived at marketing anything on the internet, and that is to turn conversations into content. And I mean, when I explain this, it probably sounds really simple, like okay, conversations into content. Um, if you're in a big organization where there's sales teams, and then there's a separate marketing department, and so on. Occasionally, uh, the sales teams need to let the marketing teams know, hey, here's what customers are asking out on the field. Is there some way we can put together you can put together some materials so that we can answer these questions for these customers by maybe giving them a guide, or a book, or something, a presentation, or something, so that by the time they come to have a conversation with the sales guy, right, they've already taken care of some of those possible objections or uncertainties that might have come up. So, um, as a smaller business, as a small business or a solopreneur, right, it can be tempting. And I say this from the perspective of an introvert who sometimes just doesn't want to talk to anyone but myself. um, it can be very tempting to think that you can build a business successfully without talking to people, right? I think there's a lot of like false advertising around like this like totally isolated business from people, and maybe some people are able to successfully isolate themselves from their customer base, but when you really think about it, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to isolate yourself from the people who you say you want to serve? You'd want to mingle and get to know them and be personable, right? That's one of the benefits of getting in business, is being able to decide and choose that the kind of people who you want to serve, and then serve them. And when you're in that type of a mode and that type of a operation, then conversations become much easier, much more satisfying, much more impactful. And then as a takeaway, it's now the source of your content. And so, what conversations am I talking about? Well, the conversations with the people who need the thing that you have to offer the most, right? And then not only have they need it the most, but then they get it, use it, put it to work, and get the result, right? Like those people, you need to keep those people close and keep the conversation going, because it's going to be content, and as content, it's going to attract. Like I was telling someone recently, I did a live training on how I create info products, and I was telling someone on the training that the whole point of a website, in my opinion, is to take the conversations that you typically need to have one on one, and to transfer those conversations into a digital form, so that someone can basically have that conversation like without you being there. Like that's the point. It's being able to uh kind of just leverage yourself in that kind of a way, right? I mean, technically that's what I'm doing with this podcast. It's a conversation that I would typically have with one person. I'm having it with many people at scale, when they're ready to have it, right? So you're not going to click and hit play on this podcast outside of your own time period, right? So outside of content and conversations being relevant to you, you wouldn't make it this far. But if that is true, then you are now in the flow of a conversation. And this conversation is obviously going to make it onto a website, and uh, that is my content strategy in a nutshell. So what does that mean? It means that we need to be regularly having conversations, and those conversations need to fall into a particular structure or frame in order for this to make sense. So again, I'll give a quick recent example why this comes to mind. Is I did my live training a couple days ago, and the way it works is after the training, I take the recording, I chop it up, I break it down, I add some supplemental resources, and I basically build it out into a more robust, useful, workable course. But in order to sell the course, I need to continue to market it, right? So there's a quick little lead up to the live event, but then after the fact, now that I have the product, in order for this to sell on Evergreen, I need to create content. And the way I'm going about that is, well, everyone who goes through the course, like, I need to have that conversation and find out, okay, what went well, what didn't go well, what are you going to do next, like what commitment have you made, and use that to get feedback to not only make the course experience better, but if there was something that I didn't address, that was kind of like an emotional or internal hang up, that would get someone that would get in the way of someone taking the actual steps that they need to take to accomplish the result that the course promises. If those things come up, those things make the best kind of content, because by the time someone, especially when it comes to like a course or something, by the time they've bought into the course or whatever, they've long already bought into you, which means you've long already given them something valuable and useful, where them paying whatever the price is for the course or whatever, is almost like a thank you for what you've already given, and I'm excited for whatever else you have uh, here, right? Which means that we have to prioritize conversations, period, in this particular realm. Like, I reflecting in the 8 years that I've been in this online business space, um, I rarely, maybe like the lower ticket stuff, right? But like the mid the mid ticket, like course products or whatever, um, typically I've had some type of touch point with the course creator, right? Maybe I left a comment and they responded, or maybe they I responded to an email of theirs, and they responded, and so it kind of closes the gap on, like, okay, not only has this person created something for someone like me, but um, they've affirmed it and validated it by having this small conversation with me that maybe helped solve a problem, or maybe kind of loosen the screw, or whatever it is. And it makes the whole, like, marketing and all of that stuff just a more intimate and personal experience. And honestly, it's something that I have shied away from, and something that I have kind of avoided um, over the years, and I'm now changing that because I can see clearly now. But also because I have made a deliberate and intentional decision about who it is that I want to help, and who it is that I want to serve, and why. And that makes for much better conversations, because the only people who are going to want to talk to me are people who resonate with that, or people who desire the kind of help that I have to give. Like, and that gets you out of the way of, if you're trying to fit into a mold or a box that isn't you, then you're gonna just not feel good about attracting people who want the box but don't want you, right? So that is my content strategy in 2023 in a nutshell, is turning conversations into content. Simple as that. And I mean, I think podcast is, like I said before, it's an excellent example, because I have conversations with people on the show. We've got a few conversations coming up that I'm really excited to share, because I personally got some value out of it. And I know that anyone who listens will get value out of it. And similarly with the stuff that I'm doing on YouTube, it's okay. I put out a piece of content, someone messages me, or calls me on the phone, and it comes up in the conversation. Well, that leads to what comes next. And so there's a continual flow where I don't have to like get contrived. People always talk about authenticity. Uh, I think there is such a void or what would I say? Because so many of us follow these same kind of formulas and scripts and so on, over time you get jaded and you see the same thing over and over again, where a conversation, a real conversation that you would have with someone in your life, like, it's always a little bit different, it's just, I think that's the future, that's the wave, and that's where I'm going. And if you'd like to go there with me, keep listening. And I think there's a way for you to leave like a voice message with this podcast. I've never done it on anybody else's, so I can't tell you exactly how. If you could figure it out, that would be really cool. Or you can just email me or whatever to continue this conversation and let me know how you're approaching content in 2023. I'd love to know. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I will see you on the next episode. Peace.